Far before the earth cooled, before oceans sighed against rocky shores or winds curled through pine trees, there was only darkness, and then light. But not a light like fire or moonbeam, not something flickering or mild. This light was born from pressure and silence, from a cosmic hush that stretched across unimaginable distances. It began in a cloud, a nursery of gas and dust, quiet and vast, suspended in the cold between stars, waiting. In these ancient clouds, hydrogen was the seed, the lightest and most abundant element, drifting and spinning across the velvet dark. Gravity, patient and invisible, began to gather these particles, pulling them closer and closer until the cloud began to fold into itself. It did not rush. It took millions of years. But with time, like breath slowly drawn in, the cloud grew dense. And then, when the pressure grew too great and the heat too deep to bear, something changed. The hydrogen atoms began to fuse. This moment, quiet, invisible, and yet monumental, marked the birth of a star. Deep within the cocoon of dust, nuclear fusion had begun. The atoms, once solitary, now joined under immense pressure, releasing bursts of energy that would ripple outward, glowing. That glow pushed the dust away like a child stretching beneath blankets, and the first rays of light pierced the cloud. A star was born, though no eye had yet seen it. In these star nurseries, scattered across galaxies like scattered seeds on fertile ground, new suns began to flicker to life. Each one followed the same sacred pattern: collapse, ignition, illumination. Yet each was different too, shaped by its mass, its elements, its place in the galactic winds. Our sun was one of these. It began humbly, like all stars do, in a cloud we now call the solar nebula. From it came the planets, the comets, and eventually us. The fusion at the heart of the sun is no ordinary fire. It is not flame, not combustion, not the kindling of logs or the flicker of candlelight. It is the union of hydrogen atoms into helium, a process that requires immense pressure and heat. Deep within the sun's core, temperatures reach over 15 million degrees Celsius. At these temperatures, the hydrogen nuclei move so fast they can overcome their natural repulsion and collide, fusing into something new. Each fusion releases energy in the form of photons, particles of light, and this light begins a long journey outward. It can take tens of thousands of years for a single photon to reach the surface of the sun, bouncing endlessly through the dense layers, slowed by collisions and turbulence. When it finally escapes into space, it travels the final leg of its journey to Earth in just 8 minutes. The light that falls on your face today may have been born in the sun's core when woolly mammoths still roamed. And yet, despite this unimaginable heat and power, the sun remains gentle from our vantage. It rises and sets with predictability, its warmth soothing rather than scalding. It paints skies in pink and gold. It nourishes leaves, powers winds, and draws oceans into the air. It does all this quietly, never ceasing its fusion, never sleeping, never dimming, at least not yet. But before it became our sun, it had to earn its way into existence. Not all collapsing clouds become stars. Some remain too cool, too small. Others collapse so violently they form black holes or neutron stars. A delicate balance must be struck between gravity and pressure, collapse and resistance. In our case, the balance held. The fusion ignited but did not explode. The pressure from the radiation exactly balanced the inward pull of gravity, creating a stable sphere of burning light. Even now, that balance continues. Every second the sun fuses around 600 million tons of hydrogen into helium. In doing so, it loses about 4 million tons of mass every second, converted directly into energy according to Einstein's famous equation, E equals mc2. That energy is light, warmth, solar wind. It is what powers all life on Earth. But the sun is not alone. Across the universe, stars are being born even now. In nebulae like the Eagle, the Orion, the Carina, light is still being made. Some of these stars will be massive, burning hot and fast, dying young in explosions we call supernovae. Others will be small and dim, glowing softly for trillions of years. The story of star birth is as diverse as the stars themselves. Yet in every case it begins the same, with hydrogen, with gravity, with stillness gathering into fire. And so when we look up at night and see the stars, we are not just looking at distant lights. We are seeing beginnings, stories just like our own, only older. We are seeing the places where matter learned to shine. The sun is simply the closest, the one that chose us, or that we were lucky enough to orbit. It is our personal furnace, our celestial clock, our constant companion. And what does this mean for us who live in the warmth of its light? It means that every tree, every breath, every heartbeat is linked to fusion. That photosynthesis, the green engine of life, only works because photons fall from the sky. That weather, seasons, tides, even the rhythm of our days all trace back to fusion in a core 93 million miles away. The sun doesn't just shine, it writes the rules of life. And so the fire beneath light is not destructive but creative. It is the architect of orbits, the painter of skis, the mother of warmth. It is a slow, silent miracle that has burned for over 4 billion years and will burn for billions more. We live because the sun lives. We sleep, but it does not. We age, but it continues, ever fusing, ever shining. As we close this first reflection, let your thoughts drift toward the early stars, the first sparks in the vast dark, the quiet engines of everything. For in their birth, our story begins. Let's drift deeper now into the golden heart of fusion. What does it truly mean for atoms to unite? Imagine hydrogen, a simple atom, one proton, one electron floating alone for billions of years in the silent chill of space. It carries potential, but not yet purpose. When two such atoms are drawn into each other by immense gravity and unrelenting heat, they merge into something more, helium. And in that moment, they release energy not just as a flash or a spark, but as light that can travel across space and time. Light that can warm a cheek, sprout a seed, spark a thought. This is what fusion does. It transforms loneliness into radiance. In the sun's core, this dance of particles unfolds constantly. Hydrogen nuclei, stripped of their electrons by heat, slam into each other with the help of quantum tunneling, a strange phenomenon where particles move through barriers they seemingly shouldn't. It is as though the universe makes room for connection when the conditions are just right. And through that quantum permission, a chain reaction begins, the proton-proton chain. First, two protons become deuterium. Then deuterium joins with another proton to become helium-3. Finally, two helium-3 atoms merge into helium-4, releasing yet more protons and energy. This series of reactions is delicate and profound, and it is happening right now, countless times a second, in the heart of our star. But the sun is not just a reactor. It is a living sphere of motion and memory. The layers surrounding the core, the radiative zone, the convective zone, are oceans of energy in flux. In the radiative zone, photons zigzag slowly outward, like lost travelers in a blizzard, taking thousands of years to reach the next layer. In the convective zone, hot plasma rises, cools, and sinks again in massive loops, like churning broth. These movements shape the surface, create sunspots, and drive the solar winds that sweep through our solar system like invisible tides. The surface we see, the photosphere, is only the beginning. Above it lies the chromosphere, glowing pink at the edges during an eclipse, and beyond that, the corona, the sun's crown, a halo of plasma reaching millions of kilometers into space. Oddly, the corona is far hotter than the surface, a mystery that still puzzles scientists. Some believe magnetic waves, snapping and coiling, transfer energy upward. Others suspect strange particles called nanoflares, but we do not yet know. The sun, though familiar, keeps some secrets. And yet, despite these mysteries, the sun's relationship with Earth is beautifully understood. It sends us light packets of energy that sustain photosynthesis, drive weather, and warm oceans. Plants drink in sunlight and convert it into sugar, feeding themselves and everything that eats them. That same light reflects from clouds, is absorbed by asphalt, evaporates water, and stirs winds. All life is a downstream consequence of solar fusion. Even the fossil fuels buried deep underground, coal, oil, gas, are just ancient sunlight trapped in decayed life. When we burn them, we are releasing light captured millions of years ago. The rhythm of the sun also gives us time. Our day is defined by its rising and setting, our year by its journey across the sky. Cultures have worshipped it, tracked it, built calendars by its motion. Stonehenge, Chichen Itza, the pyramids all aligned to the sun not for beauty but reverence. Because before clocks, before compasses, there was the light always returning. Even our sleep cycles are tuned to it, the circadian rhythm, a deep biological clock ticking in every cell, listens for dawn. But the sun's influence extends even further into the edge of space. Its wind, a stream of charged particles, creates the heliosphere, a vast bubble that surrounds our solar system and shields us from cosmic rays. This wind dances with Earth's magnetic field, creating auroras that ripple green and purple through polar skis. These lights are whispers from the sun, soft signals of its restless motion. Sometimes, the wind turns fierce, solar flares erupt, coronal mass ejections burst outward. These can disrupt satellites, communications, power grids, but mostly the sun's touch is gentle, constant. And in all this, the deeper lesson is one of balance. The sun is massive, 99.8% of the solar system's mass, yet it is not chaotic. Its gravity anchors planets, its light nourishes them, its heat neither too harsh nor too weak. If Earth were slightly closer or farther, life might never have taken root. This narrow band, this Goldilocks zone, is where our story became possible. The sun's mass, fusion rate, distance, and lifespan all align just right. It feels like chance. Or like a quiet kind of intention written into physics. Fusion, then, is more than a reaction. It is a metaphor for unity, for small things coming together to make something more powerful than themselves. In stars, fusion builds the elements. After hydrogen and helium, heavier stars begin to fuse carbon, oxygen, and even iron. Every atom in your bones, calcium, carbon, phosphorus, was made in a star. We are quite literally made of light's memory. And still, we are only beginning to understand. Scientists on Earth are trying to replicate fusion in labs and reactors, hoping to harness it as a clean energy source. Imagine a world where we light our cities with the same process that lights the stars, where we no longer burn but merge, where power is created through unity, not destruction. It is possible, though difficult. Fusion requires control, stability, containment. The same balance that stars naturally maintain must be recreated in steel and plasma. Meanwhile, we continue to study the sun, sending probes and telescopes. The Parker Solar Probe now orbits closer to the sun than any craft before, skimming through the corona, feeling the breath of the solar wind. The Solar Dynamics Observatory watches sunspots bloom and fade. And still, the sun burns, unchanged by our curiosity, unmoved by our instruments. It does not boast. It does not rage. It simply continues shining through cloud and winter, through history and silence. It is the quiet architect of everything we love. And in its nuclear heart, atoms still fuse not in fury but in rhythm, not in noise but in light. And as this section draws to a close, perhaps you can feel it not just on your skin but in your memory, your marrow. A quiet heat, a distant warmth, the echo of fusion written into the cells of every living thing. Let us return now to the sun, not as a fact, but as a presence, not as an object in space, but as the quiet pulse that keeps our world in motion. Every morning it rises, not because it must, but because it always has. Its light stretches over ocean, sweeps across forests, brushes rooftops, and enters windows like a promise. Even when hidden by clouds or cloaked by night, the sun continues, unwavering, generous, untroubled by our forgetting. And yet, like all things, the sun has a story arc. It is not eternal, it is not immune to time. Already it has burned for more than 4.6 billion years. That is older than the earth, older than the moon, older than any mountain or memory held in stone. And now it stands in the middle of its life, fusing hydrogen steadily, shining with balance and brilliance. But one day the hydrogen will run low. The fuel that feeds its light will dwindle. What happens then is a soft unraveling, not explosive, but immense. As the core exhausts its hydrogen, it contracts, squeezing tighter. In response, the outer layers expand, ballooning outward. The sun will grow into a red giant, swelling beyond Mercury, perhaps beyond Venus. The earth may be swallowed or it may be scorched into silence. Either way, the world we know will not survive. And yet, this too is part of the process. For in that swelling, new elements are born. Helium fuses into carbon, into oxygen. The star becomes a forge once more, crafting the ingredients for future worlds. Eventually, the outer layers drift away into space, becoming a planetary nebula, a soft, glowing shell of light and gas. The core, now stripped and dense, will become a white dwarf, no longer fusing but still hot, still glowing faintly in the dark. Over trillions of years, it will cool, fade, and become a black dwarf, cold, dark, and invisible. But that part of the story lies far ahead, beyond our own endings. Here and now, the sun remains steady, and in its steadiness, it teaches us something rare. That to burn without consuming, to shine without shouting, to warm without demanding anything in return, this is power at its most graceful. It asks nothing. It simply gives. And through that giving, life unfolds. The sunlight we feel today is ancient, not only because it took thousands of years to reach us from the core, but because the process that creates it began long before humans existed, before rivers found their beds, before wings learned the sky. That warmth on your skin carries the weight of eons. And in that weight is a message. You are not separate from the universe. You are written in its story. Think of it, everything that grows, moves, breathes, or dreams here on Earth owes its existence to a star 93 million miles away. Flowers turn their faces toward it. Trees raise their arms. Children squint and laugh. The sun shapes our seasons, our myths, our moods. It has no eyes, yet it paints the world in gold. It has no voice, yet it speaks in warmth and color. Even our emotions follow its rhythm. Light affects chemicals in our brain. It lifts our spirit, signals the start of day, and invites us to sleep when it fades. We are tethered to it in body and feeling, as if part of us still remembers that we came from the same light, the same explosion of matter that formed the stars. And we are not the only ones. Across distant planets, moons, and ice-covered rocks, the sun casts its reach. It stirs geysers on Europa, melts ice on comets, sculpts the rings of Saturn with its gentle pressure. It is the silent conductor of a solar symphony, and all the planets, even the frozen ones, move in step with its tune. One could say the sun is just a ball of gas fusing atoms in a predictable way. But that misses the truth. The truth is this: the sun is a cosmic act of love. It is energy made generous. It is the universe leaning toward life. And it is not alone. There are billions of stars, each with its own light, its own story, its own quiet influence on the places that surround it. We live in a galaxy of suns. Some are being born right now. Others are dying. But all of them carry the same secret in their hearts: the ability to turn matter into meaning. And this is perhaps the most beautiful part. The sun does not know us, it does not see or hear, yet it has shaped our every hour. We are not separate observers looking up. We are participants in its rhythm. Our blood, red with iron, comes from stars. Our breath, full of oxygen, was first made in stellar cores. The calcium in your teeth, the gold on your ring, the carbon in your chest, all born in ancient stars, scattered, collected, and finally gathered into you. So when you look up and feel its light, remember, it is not just warmth. It is origin. It is story. It is memory older than anything else you know. And long after you are gone, long after your footprints have faded and your name has been whispered for the last time, the light of the sun will still fall on oceans, still dance through trees, still wake sleeping seeds. And if the earth is no more, if our planet returns to dust, then that light may still touch other worlds, unknown, unborn, and begin again. Because that is what stars do. They give, they build, they begin. The fire beneath light is the first chapter of every living thing. It is the quiet miracle behind every breath. It is the music that plays in silence, the warmth that travels across time, the thread that binds us to the universe, softly, invisibly, eternally. Listen closely, not with your ears but with your stillness, and you may begin to sense it. A rhythm, slow and steady, far beyond the reach of sound. It beats beneath everything, hidden deep within the golden furnace of the sun. This is the heartbeat of fusion, a gentle roar that never quiets, never rests. Though we live a world away from its source, our days, our lives, even our silences, are shaped by its pulsing breath. The sun's fusion is not a wild flame, not a noisy combustion like the burning of wood or coal. It is something more ancient, more elegant. It is the joining of hydrogen atoms in the sun's core, fused into helium through processes so exact, so balanced, they hum rather than explode. And this hum, this quiet storm of transformation, is the source of all sunlight. It powers the winds, feeds the oceans, breathes life into leaves. It is, quite literally, the roar behind every whisper on Earth. At the center of the sun, where pressure and temperature reach unimaginable heights, hydrogen atoms are stripped of their electrons, forming a dense sea of plasma. The nuclei, positively charged protons, resist each other, like magnets refusing to touch. But at temperatures exceeding 15 million degrees Celsius, they move fast enough to overcome that resistance. Quantum tunneling lends its quiet hand, allowing particles to do the improbable, to pass through barriers as if they weren't there at all. And so, two protons merge, forming deuterium. This releases a positron and a neutrino, particles so small and so strange that they pass through nearly everything. The deuterium finds another proton, forming helium-3. Then, two helium-3 nuclei collide to create helium-4, the stable ash of stellar fusion. And with each of these steps, energy is set free, photons that will wander through the sun's layers, taking millennia to reach the surface and just minutes to journey to Earth. But this process, mechanical as it sounds, feels more like a song than a machine. The sun pulses, not just with light but with sound waves, enormous, slow waves that travel through its interior. These are not heard by human ears, but they shape the sun's behavior. Heliosismology, the study of these solar vibrations, has taught us how the sun's inner layers move and breathe. It is as though the sun is singing to itself, a lullaby in plasma, a rhythm written in fire. And this heartbeat, this fusion song, never misses a beat. It has been steady for billions of years, with every second bringing forth enough energy to power human civilization for millions of years. Every moment, more than 4 million tons of the sun's mass vanish, converted into pure energy through the quiet alchemy of fusion. That energy pours out in all directions, illuminating planets, warming dust, glinting off frozen moons. It's strange to think that we are here, walking through forests, building cities, whispering stories, all because of this invisible process happening far away in a sphere of gas. The sunlight that dapples a lake, that paints the edges of clouds, that wakes us each morning, began its journey in the tremble of two atoms embracing. That single act, multiplied endlessly, becomes radiance. It becomes life. The sun's surface to the naked eye appears smooth and constant, but it is alive with movement. Granules bubble like boiling water. Solar flares twist like ropes of fire. Beneath this churning, the heartbeat of fusion continues, unaffected, undisturbed, steady as breath. The fusion core is insulated from the chaos of the surface. No storm, no flare, no darkening sunspot can disrupt its rhythm. It is deep, central, untouchable. And though this heartbeat is invisible, we feel its effects everywhere. In the way morning light drips slowly across rooftops, in the way fields turn gold at noon, in the way shadows stretch long in winter, in the warming of soil, the blooming of petals, the stirring of wind. These are its echoes. These are the gentle roars we can sense, even if we do not hear them. The sun is not unique in its fusion, though to us it feels sacred. All stars fuse. In the hearts of every star, small or giant, young or old, fusion writes its song. Some stars fuse heavier elements. Some burn hot and die young in supernovae. Others glow faintly for trillions of years. But all of them begin the same way, with hydrogen, with gravity, with a pressure so vast that atoms can no longer remain apart. And in that union, hydrogen becoming helium, energy is born not with noise, but with necessity. The universe leans toward light, and the fusion at the sun's heart is its most graceful expression. On Earth, we strive to mimic it. In fusion reactors, tokamaks, and laser labs, scientists attempt to recreate the sun's song in miniature. The dream is profound, clean, endless energy drawn from the same process that powers the stars. But it is not easy. Containing plasma hotter than the sun's core is no small feat. We are still learning how to hold such a delicate flame. And yet, we continue. Because to master fusion is to hold the secret of the stars in our hands. But until that day, we remain children of the sun, warmed not by reactors but by a star we did not build. And as we bask in its light, we might forget its complexity, the billions of reactions per second, the endless conversions, the vast orchestra of particles and heat. It is easy to take the sun for granted, to treat it as background. But when we remember the heartbeat behind its glow, we begin to see differently. We see that every sunrise is a rebirth, that every sunbeam is a message from fusion's fire, that we are, in a way, reflections of that quiet power, beings made not just from sunlight, but from the rhythm that creates it. So let the sun's gentle roar remind you, there is music even in silence, there is power even in stillness. The sun does not shout to be heard, it shines. And in that shining it speaks to oceans and atoms alike, not in words but in warmth, not in thunder but in light. PGSQL. Within the fiery nursery of gas and gravity, the slow alchemy of fusion begins. The cloud does not know it is becoming a star. It only folds, falls inward, whispers tighter. Pressed by invisible fingers of its own making, the core heats with silent screams. Hydrogen, once drifting cold and lonely, is forced into intimacy with itself. As pressure builds and temperature rises past 10 million degrees, the atomic bonds buckle and the old hydrogen forgets its name. Two protons collide, briefly repel like ancient enemies, but the crowding is relentless and they surrender, binding into helium through a process etched in time. And with each union a new language emerges, light in its first true form, not reflected, not borrowed, not bounced from stone or surface, but birthed. This light has no direction, no witness, no eye to see it. It scatters within the opaque chaos of the star's belly, bouncing for thousands of years before ever finding a way out. But still it is born again and again in relentless rhythm. This is nuclear fusion, not explosion, but endurance. It is not fire as we know it, but a communion of pressure and patience. In that core, a gram of matter becomes light enough to lift mountains or stir winds across a continent, and yet the star feels no urgency. Its fusion unfolds across eons, a slow breathing of the cosmos. Around it, the gravity thickens into orbits, dust clumps, planets form in its wake. The leftover material, what fusion could not consume, becomes everything else. The sun births not only light but also time, for time too is shaped by the star's stability. Without the evenness of its output, without its steady glow, chaos would unmake calendars and tides. The Earth's heartbeat is tethered to this distant fusion, spinning in faithful rhythm. Every leaf that unfurls, every wing that beats, every child that laughs beneath the sky, all live by borrowed fusion. And yet the sun itself is unaware of its worshippers. It does not know it warms. It does not know it burns. Its purpose is unchosen, and yet from this indifference life arises. Even now, in the heart of the star, trillions of collisions unfold every second. Each act of fusion releases not just light, but heat and the subtle pressure that keeps the star from collapsing. It is a balance more delicate than any machine, more enduring than any monument. The inward pull of gravity tries always to crush the star inward, to make it fall into itself. But fusion pushes back. It radiates outward, not in anger, not in defiance, but in balance. This equilibrium between compression and release is what allows the sun to endure, a fragile contract signed in plasma and time. And as the star burns, it reshapes its heart. Hydrogen dwindles. Helium accumulates like ash in a furnace. Over billions of years, the chemistry of the core changes. The sun is aging even as it glows. Its brilliance is not eternal, it is a phase of balance. A chapter, not a conclusion. But while that chapter lasts, fusion writes its story into the sky. It powers the photosynthesis that feeds forests. It makes shadows dance beneath olive trees and stirs winds across oceans. It warms the crust, feeds the seasons, and becomes prayer in 1,000 languages. Yet few remember that all of this begins in a silence deeper than any temple, the sun's core where atoms learn to let go. And there, in that abyss of lightless brilliance, the universe becomes aware of its own becoming. It is here that the past is remade and the future prepared. Fusion, by nature, is transformative. Two become one and in doing so lose their individuality. This is not destruction, it is sacrifice. And in that sacrifice, the star becomes a source. Not just of light, but of identity. Every human breath, every mountain shadow, every whisper in a darkened room owes something to that sacrifice. The sun burns so that we may speak. The fire beneath light is not rage, it is offering. Quiet, constant, and holy in its repetition. It asks for nothing. It gives without knowing. It dies slowly so that something else may live. In the cradle of ancient gas clouds, where hydrogen slept in chilled darkness, the seeds of stars waited, patient as time itself. Dust swirled like forgotten prayers across the galactic arms, gathering, colliding, condensing in the hush of gravitational whispers. It began not with fire but with cold. In the silence of space, a gentle collapse. Atom met atom in a cosmic embrace, pulling closer, tighter, under the relentless will of gravity. At the center of each forming sphere, pressure mounted like an unsung hymn, until the cold could no longer hold its breath. The temperature rose slowly, steadily, until the silence broke with ignition. And in that secret moment when core heat passed 10 million degrees, a star was born not with sound but with light. The fusion of hydrogen into helium began, and with it, the heart of the star began to beat. The process was simple, yet profound beyond comprehension. Four protons, dancing in quantum proximity, fused into one helium nucleus, and in doing so, a tiny fragment of mass vanished, transformed into pure energy. This energy did not explode outward in fury, but rippled through the dense plasma as photons, bouncing, scattering, like whispers lost in a crowded room. It would take thousands of years for a single photon born in the core to reach the surface, an odyssey through layers of gas, denser than any mountain, hotter than any flame. But once it did, it leapt across millions of kilometers as sunlight. That sunlight we feel on our skin, warm and golden, began its journey before humanity first dreamed of flight or fire. It is old light, ancient truth, delivered in silence. And yet it powers the winds, stirs the oceans, wakes the forests. Every leaf that turns toward the sun bows to a fusion that began eons before. Fusion is not a thing but a process, a persistence, a commitment made in plasma. Unlike fission, which splits and shatters, fusion joins. It heals. It unites light atoms into heavier ones like building with fire. The sun does this effortlessly, millions of times per second, holding its integrity not through force, but through perfect balance, the inward pull of gravity, the outward push of light. A star walks this tightrope for billions of years, maintaining equilibrium in silence. Its shape, its shine, its rhythm, all determined by this invisible war of forces. Too little pressure and fusion fades, too much and it burns too quickly. But in the balance, life is made possible. In the balance, we find mourning and memory. As the hydrogen dwindles, the story of the star deepens. Helium builds up in the core like the ashes of its own fire, and the fusion shifts, fumbles, then flickers into new pathways. The sun is not eternal, but its life is long and slow, a candle the size of a world. As it ages, it will swell into a red giant, shedding its outer layers like an old robe, exposing the naked core, where heavier elements may briefly ignite. And when it can fuse no more, it will rest. The outer glow will drift into space, a glowing bubble of memory called a planetary nebula, while the core will cool into a white dwarf, the ember of a star that once held planets in orbit and poems in light. But for now, our sun is young, middle-aged by stellar standards. It continues its gentle labor, fusing atoms with every heartbeat, emitting energy with every breath. The photons leaving its surface today will warm a future still unknown. It gives without exhaustion, without anger, without asking. The sun does not sleep, for it is the waking eye of time in our sky. It burns not for us, but we live because it burns. And in its light, we find our seasons, our shadows, our stories. Before galaxies found their names, before time settled into the clockwork ticking we now recognize, there was only cloud, cold, wandering, and formless. These clouds of hydrogen and helium, the simplest gases, drifted silently across the expanding universe, untamed and without destination. But within the stillness, a quiet gravity began to whisper. One atom leaned toward another, and then another until vast cosmic clouds began to gather mass. These gatherings, nebulae, swelled in darkness like breath held in the lungs of the cosmos, and as they grew heavier, their hearts began to collapse inward. Pressure mounted, temperature soared. The collapse, unstoppable now, gave birth to something luminous. A star was born, not with fire but with fusion. Within the newborn star's core, temperatures reached millions of degrees. Hydrogen atoms, once content to drift alone, were now being crushed together with such ferocity that their very essence fused. This was nuclear fusion, a process so elegant it turned matter into light. In this relentless furnace, 4 hydrogen nuclei merged to become one helium nucleus. And in that transformation, a tiny bit of mass vanished, transmuted into pure energy. It was Einstein's equation, E equals mc2, unfolding in real time, a symphony of matter turned into brilliance. This light journeyed outward, bouncing and scattering through layers of plasma, taking tens of thousands of years to reach the surface. But when it finally escaped into space, it raced at light speed. 8 minutes later, it would touch Earth as sunshine. The Sun, our own star, has done this for over 4 billion years. It fuses 600 million tons of hydrogen into helium every second. From this violent union, we receive warmth, light, and life. Plants grow, seasons turn, oceans breathe. And yet we rarely consider the price of such beauty, that within the core of the Sun, an ancient war of particles never pauses. The Sun never sleeps. It burns in silence so that we may wake each morning. Beneath its calm surface lies a ceaseless thunder, a constant ballet of nuclei crashing together, releasing the light that spills over our blue planet. But the story of the Sun is not one of eternal youth. As its hydrogen diminishes, the balance within will tilt, the fusion will slow, the core will contract, temperatures will rise again, and in its final chapters the Sun will swell into a red giant, engulfing Mercury and Venus and perhaps even Earth. Its glow will shift and the light we once knew will grow cold. Fusion will falter. The helium core will flicker with new reactions, carbon, maybe oxygen, but eventually the fire will fade. The Sun will shed its outer layers in a final breath, becoming a planetary nebula. At its heart will remain a white dwarf, no longer burning but glowing faintly with the memory of the star it once was. We walk in daylight without often realizing that we are walking in the breath of nuclear fire, that every leaf, every shadow, every color we see is the residue of fusion. That warmth is not just heat, but the song of atoms bound in pressure, dancing to ancient forces. And when night falls, the stars we glimpse, tiny, trembling, are each a sun, locked in the same eternal labor. They are the fire that does not sleep. They are the engines of time, forging the elements of life and death. Fusion gave us helium, but in greater stars it will go further. It will craft carbon, nitrogen, oxygen, even iron, the bones of Earth, the iron in our blood, all from the crushing embrace of atomic nuclei. Stars die, but in doing so they scatter these elements into the universe, into dust that will drift, gather, and ignite anew. You are not only made of stardust. You are made of the fire that once bound it. You carry within you the memory of a fusion reaction. You are a cooled whisper of a roaring sun. And so, the star that never sleeps becomes the fire that never forgets. In the deep velvet cradle of the cosmos, long before Earth took its first breath, clouds of dust and gas swirled in cold silence. These weren't ordinary clouds but vast galactic wombs, nebulae, where atoms whispered possibilities into the emptiness. Inside one such cloud, drawn together by the ancient pull of gravity, hydrogen atoms began their delicate dance. At first, they drifted lazily, nudging and brushing like strangers in a quiet crowd. But as gravity continued to fold space inward, those nudges turned into collisions, and the cloud thickened like breath gathering on cold glass. The pressure rose, and so did the heat, until somewhere deep in the collapsing heart, the temperature surpassed 10 million degrees. And then quietly, elegantly, something ancient awoke. Hydrogen, the lightest of elements, fused into helium, releasing a flood of energy not as fire but as pure light. A star had been born, not with a bang but with a burn. The fusion was relentless. Each second, hundreds of millions of tons of hydrogen converted into energy, the same energy that would one day warm Earth's oceans and bathe leaves in gold. Yet in its heart the star remained unaware. It did not rage or shout. It simply continued, quiet as breath, steady as a vow. Photons, born deep in the core, began their long, slow journey outward, bouncing, scattering, sometimes taking thousands of years to reach the surface before escaping into space as visible light. That light, still warm with the memory of fusion, would someday travel to eyes that wonder and minds that question. And though the process was violent in physics, it looked gentle in distance. A soft shimmer in the night, a flicker in a lover's gaze, a child's first drawing of the sun. This was not a one-time miracle but a cosmic rhythm. Every star in the night sky is a memory of this process, frozen in light years and framed in darkness. Some stars are massive and fast-burning, living brilliant but brief lives. Others are small and stubborn, glowing softly for trillions of years. But all of them, every sun and speck, was born in the same way, through the pull of gravity, the rise of pressure, and the awakening of fusion. It's a reminder that even in cold, empty silence, creation waits patiently. And when the time is right, light always finds a way out. Beneath the golden surface that dazzles our skis lies a secret engine, an ancient dance of pressure, temperature, and raw creation. So fierce, yet so delicate, it has kept our world alive for billions of years. This is no simple flame. It is a crucible where atoms collide with such force that they become something new, something radiant. Inside the sun's core, hydrogen atoms move with impossible speed, jostled by the sheer gravity crushing inward from the weight of the solar body. As these atoms come close enough, the strong nuclear force, nature's tightest grip, pulls them into union, transforming 4 hydrogen nuclei into 1 helium atom, and in the process releasing a tiny drop of mass. But mass is never lost. It is turned into energy, as Einstein once whispered through his immortal equation, E equals mc2, and that tiny drop becomes a flood. Each second, our sun sacrifices over 4 million tons of its mass to light, warmth, and radiation, streams of photons that begin a long journey outward, bouncing and scattering for tens of thousands of years through layers of solar plasma. This energy, once born in the core, emerges eventually at the surface as light. The light that falls across your hand in the morning, that paints sunsets and glimmers in a child's eye, began in an inferno millions of degrees hot, in collisions of particles too small to see, in a process too quiet for ears but thunderous in consequence. Fusion is not fire, it is transmutation. It is not burning but becoming. Hydrogen, the simplest element in the universe, forged in the birth throes of the cosmos, now becomes helium, and in time this chain will birth carbon, oxygen, iron. In the center of stars, the universe writes its elemental poetry, letters of light on a scroll of time. The balance is delicate. Gravity wants collapse, fusion demands release. If gravity were to win, the star would shrink into darkness. If fusion won entirely, the star would burst apart. But for now, there is harmony, a tension so perfect that the sun breathes energy into space with rhythmic precision, pulsing like a heart that never stops. Every second, this process births more energy than all the bombs humanity has ever built. And yet it is not destruction. It is stability. It is life. This endless cycle of creation reminds us that destruction and birth are not opposites but companions, partners in the sun's eternal song. Even more humbling is the realization that every atom in your body heavier than hydrogen was forged in a star just like this one. Perhaps not our sun, but some long-dead celestial sibling, whose life ended in a magnificent explosion, scattering elements across the galaxy. The calcium in your bones, the iron in your blood, the oxygen you breathe, these were made in stellar furnaces. You are stardust remembering itself. The sun, then, is not simply a light. It is the womb of the periodic table. It is the engine of time on Earth. Without its steady fusion, winds would still, Oceans would freeze and even thought itself would fade in the cold. But the sun does not sleep. It burns without a flame, hums without a voice, and gives without asking anything in return. And though we cannot stare directly into its heart, every sunrise is proof that fusion still sings, that the star is still alive, and that the universe is still unfolding, one atom at a time. PGSQL. The solar furnace never pauses, not for a blink, not for a breath. Within the radiant heart of our star, where hydrogen atoms are flung together under immense pressure, fusion never truly ends. This process, so patient and fierce, is the heartbeat of our world. The chains of reaction weave a tapestry of light and warmth, birthing photons that will journey outward in a staggered pilgrimage, taking tens of thousands of years just to escape the core. Each photon is born from collisions, a flicker born of force, and this flicker is destined to ripple outward across the void. But the light does not travel in straight lines within the sun. It bounces, it scatters, it is trapped in the crowd. Like a wanderer lost in a luminous forest, a photon weaves a fractal path outward through the dense layers of the solar interior. In the radiative zone, light becomes a memory with no direction. Here, the particles are like dancers spun in chaotic spirals, each step dictated by collisions that reroute, delay, and confuse the journey of energy. And yet this chaos is sacred. It is how the sun shields us from collapse. Each photon may be reborn a million times over before it escapes the stellar maze. Yet when one finally slips beyond the convection zone, where heat moves in rising loops like water boiling in a pot, it finds the final pathway outward, an escape to the surface. In this final mile, convection cells churn and spiral like molten petals, each petal flowering with heat. These cells are not silent. They sing in frequencies we cannot hear, seismic hymns rippling through the solar surface. They are the breath of the sun, and their rhythm speaks of the balance between gravity's grip and fusion's roar. The light that emerges from the sun, photosphere, this glowing skin, is ancient, though it takes only 8 minutes to reach us. Think of it. A ray of sunlight you feel on your skin today began its journey before humans learned to write. That soft golden warmth carries echoes of the sun's interior convulsions, of particles crushed into new forms. And so the light we see is both a ghost and a promise. It tells us of fusion's triumph, of stars that forge elements and give meaning to empty space. Even in its quietest moments, sunlight is testimony. It reminds the earth that energy can be patient, that light can be ancient and yet arrive new. And it is not just light, it is a spectrum of stories. From ultraviolet whispers that sculpt the ozone to visible threads that weave through our atmosphere to infrared lullabies that warm oceans and bones. All of it is sunlight. All of it is born of fusion. And it shapes everything, weather patterns, plant growth, skin cells, shadows. It is the hidden hand behind the green of leaves and the blue of skies. Even time itself is lit by the rhythm of day and night, carved by the sun's slow movement across the dome. Our calendars, our circadian clocks, our migrations, all pulse to the beat of the sun. In that sense, fusion is not confined to the star. It echoes in everything that pays attention to the light. We are not simply bathed in solar radiation, we are bound to it. We drink it through chlorophyll, we wear it in vitamin D, we measure our lives by its cycle. And what of the future? The sun will not burn forever. One day the hydrogen in its core will dwindle, the balance will shift. Gravity, long held in check by fusion, will begin to win. The core will contract, heating even further, and in that new heat helium will fuse into carbon. The sun will swell, becoming a red giant. Earth may be swallowed or scorched. But before that distant fate, the sun will enter a long twilight, a farewell dance that will last for millions of years. In its end, the sun will shed its outer layers, becoming a planetary nebula, a ghostly veil of colored gas. At its heart will remain a white dwarf, a dense cinder of what once was, glowing softly for eons more before fading into black. Even in death, the sun will be gentle. It will not go out with an explosion but a sigh. And so fusion, that silent builder, that patient furnace, will one day cease. But the story it wrote in light will remain. The elements it forged will drift into space, seeding new stars, new planets, new chances for life. And perhaps in some other cradle of warmth, in some other nursery of starlight, eyes will open and wonder at their sun, never knowing that their atoms once belonged to ours. Fusion is the unbroken whisper across time, a breath shared between stars and stones. The sun never truly sleeps, not in the present, not in the memory it leaves in everything that glows. Even in silence, its fire is a lullaby that never stops humming. Section 3. The final radiance, a future bound in flame. And so the clock ticks on, though the sun has no hands to mark the passing hours, only the changing breath of its own fire. For billions more years, it shall continue this sacred combustion, this selfless burning of itself into light. Each proton that collides is not merely physics but a soft confession of surrender, a vow to keep life blooming far away on a blue world it shall never touch. It will hold the earth in an embrace of photons, warm, nurturing, and relentless, while time carves valleys and lifts mountains below. But nothing in the universe is spared the arc of destiny, not even the stars. The hydrogen, so abundant, will dwindle, the core will grumble, pressure will falter. And then, in that sacred hush between what was and what will be helium, once the product shall become the fuel. Helium, that quiet twin of creation, shall now carry the burden. Triple alpha reactions will begin, and carbon shall whisper its first breath into being. The sun, now swollen and ruddy, shall become a red giant, a name that masks the sorrow of its transformation. It will expand, enfolding Mercury and Venus like a shroud. Earth will not survive untouched. The oceans will evaporate, atmosphere scorched and torn, continents devoured by a sky that once loved them. Yet even then, amid destruction, the sun will not rage. It will merely follow the script written in its atoms, a soft death, a blooming of energy into size. It is not wrath but inevitability. The red giant will pulse. It will heave and sigh. It will shed its outer layers like a dandelion letting go of seeds in a slow wind. The solar wind, now a whisper, will become a gale, a gentle storm of plasma drifting outward to kiss the bones of distant planets. What remains will be a white dwarf, no longer a furnace but an ember. Small, hot, and dense, it will shine without flame. No fusion, no rebirth, only memory. The light will persist, but not from burning. It will be the afterglow of a life well lived. The sun will rest in silence, surrounded by a planetary nebula, a ring of scattered color, a luminous tombstone glowing in the vast cemetery of stars. Time will dim it. Eons will cool it. One day, even that white dwarf shall become dark, a black dwarf, unseen, unknowable. It is a death that takes more time than the universe has yet known. And yet, even in that cold end, something sacred remains. The gold in your blood, the calcium in your bones, the oxygen you breathe, all born from stars just like this. The sun, too, shall gift itself to future atoms, future life, though it will not see them. So let us return to this moment, to now. The sun still shines, it still fuses, it still keeps the dark at bay. Each morning it rises, not by choice but by promise, a cosmic contract inked in hydrogen. Look up and know this, it is not merely a ball of fire, it is a prayer unfolding, a light that does not sleep, a story whispered not in words but in waves of warmth and life. And as long as it burns, we are not forgotten in the cold tide of time. We are remembered, cradled in light. We are children of fusion, born not just of blood, but of flame. Beneath the swirling radiance of the solar surface, far beyond the crackling sunspots and arching prominences, lies a heart of unfathomable fire, the core, where temperatures soar past 15 million degrees Celsius. It is here, in this infernal crucible, that hydrogen atoms, simple, ancient, and abundant, are pressed together under such titanic pressure that they surrender their individuality. Protons collide, fuse, and in doing so, unleash the most potent form of energy known to nature, nuclear fusion. Each reaction births a helium nucleus, and in that moment, a tiny portion of the hydrogen's mass is transformed into pure energy, as foretold by Einstein's elegant equation, E equals mc2. This metamorphosis is relentless and invisible, a quiet yet cataclysmic ballet that has endured for 4.6 billion years, feeding the light that bathes our world and the warmth that cradles all life. The path from core to cosmos is long and patient. Photons born in the heart of fusion do not leap directly to space. Instead, they begin a slow, meandering journey, bouncing from one atom to the next in the sun's dense radiative zone. This photon diffusion, often called the random walk, can take over 100,000 years. A single particle of light, created before human civilization took its first breath, may only now be rising toward the surface. Above the radiative zone lies the convective zone, where giant rivers of plasma churn like boiling soup. Here, heat is carried upward by convection currents, which eventually deliver the radiant energy to the photosphere, the luminous shell we see from Earth. When these photons finally escape, they race across the vacuum of space in just 8 minutes to reach us, ancient light, born in primordial violence, delivering life. The scale is both humbling and terrifying. Every second the sun fuses approximately 600 million tons of hydrogen into helium. Of that, about 4 million tons are converted directly into energy. Think of it. Every tick of the clock sacrifices matter that once existed as atomic mass and rebirths it as warmth, motion, and vision. It is this energy that shapes wind patterns, drives ocean currents, lifts water to form clouds, and ignites photosynthesis in every green leaf. The entire tapestry of life on Earth is woven from the fuel of the sun's core, an inferno we can scarcely comprehend yet depend on completely. And though we bask daily in its bounty, we are witnessing but a fragment of its generous fury, its truest brilliance hidden deep within, beyond reach, beyond sight, but not beyond understanding. Yet this process, awe-inspiring though it is not eternal. The sun is bound by the limits of its own fuel. It is halfway through its main sequence life, and though that may mean another 5 billion years of stability, it will eventually run out of the hydrogen that powers its core. When that day comes, the delicate balance between gravity and fusion will falter. Gravity will tighten its grip, the core will contract, and new reactions will begin. Helium will ignite, the outer layers will bloat, and the sun will transform into a red giant, devouring Mercury, Venus, and possibly Earth. Its brilliant career as a main sequence star will end in a gentle shedding of layers, leaving behind a white dwarf, dim, dense, and dying. This is the fate of most stars like our sun. Not an explosive finale, but a fading into silence, like the last ember of a fire that once roared. Still, within the time that remains, the sun continues its quiet labor, an engine of unimaginable scale, turning mass into light without pause. And in doing so, it reminds us of a fundamental truth. The cosmos is not powered by chaos alone, but by structured transformation. Fusion is nature's forge, a process of union that yields power beyond measure. In the darkest reaches of space, where cold and void reign, the sun stands as a beacon of defiance, a promise that fire can be born of unity, and that even the smallest atoms, when brought together, can shine with the strength of a god. The light that kisses Earth each morning is born in a place where no eye can see, a cauldron of chaos and order deep within the heart of the sun, where hydrogen atoms are pressed into union by forces almost unimaginable. In that core, under pressures 250 billion times stronger than Earth's atmosphere and temperatures exceeding 15 million degrees Celsius, the quiet violence of nuclear fusion unfolds. Each second, over 600 million tons of hydrogen are converted into helium, releasing energy that began its journey tens of thousands of years ago, trapped in the plasma like light struggling through fog. This journey, known as radiative diffusion, is no sprint. It's a slow, winding trek as photons scatter, absorb, and re-emit their way from the core to the surface. What finally escapes as sunlight is not the same energy that began. It has been transformed and softened, like wisdom earned by experience. This process is not just the engine of our solar system, but the story of endurance, of how nature refines power through restraint and chaos into brilliance and warmth. Every ray that strikes your skin, every glimmer on the surface of the sea, every shadow ever cast, they are all born of fusion, each a testament to atoms surrendering to a greater whole. The sun does not burn like firewood. It fuses like a memory, like a song carried for eons before being heard. And this fusion is not endless. It is a story halfway told. One day, when the hydrogen runs low, the balance will tip. The sun will swell into a red giant, a phase of beauty and destruction. It will consume Mercury and Venus, possibly even Earth, before shedding its outer layers into a glowing planetary nebula, leaving behind a white dwarf, hot, dense, and slowly cooling. Yet even in that future death, there is beauty. The atoms fused within the sun's core will find their way into dust, and that dust into planets and perhaps into life. You are made of that same material. The calcium in your bones, the iron in your blood, the gold on your fingers, all were born in ancient stars that lived, fused, died, and exploded. So when you look at the sun, you're not just seeing light. You're looking at your origin, your lineage written in the nuclear script of fusion. And the sun, this sleepless star, remains for now a beacon of steadiness in a swirling cosmos. It turns hydrogen into hope, light into life. It whispers to the atoms, "Come closer, give up your separateness, and become something more." This is the lesson of fusion, not just in physics, but in being. Unity forged under pressure, radiance born from surrender, a luminous promise that from intensity something tender can emerge. In the far future, long after the Earth has quieted and the solar system grown cold, the sun will still shine, but differently. It will have exhausted the hydrogen in its core, the fuel that kept its heart beating for billions of years. In its dying days, the sun will swell into a red giant, engulfing Mercury, Venus, and perhaps even Earth, its atmosphere bloated and crimson with the helium it now burns. The calm hum of fusion will shift, growing louder, more erratic, as helium nuclei crash together to form heavier elements like carbon and oxygen. But this new dance is brief. Helium burns hotter, faster, and less efficiently than hydrogen. The balance tips. Gravity presses inward once more, and the star, once defiant against collapse, surrenders. It sheds its outer layers in a last, silent sigh, a planetary nebula that floats like a ghost in space, a luminous shell of memory. What remains is a white dwarf, no larger than Earth but holding the mass of the sun, a cinder of former glory glowing with leftover heat. There in its core no fusion stirs, no more collisions, just the slow fatting of a star's echo. And yet, what a legacy! Every atom of carbon in your body, every molecule of oxygen you breathe, every speck of calcium in your bones was born in the furnace of such stars. The sun is not just the light of day, it is the ancestral fire of life. Fusion is not merely physics, it is inheritance. And as you walk beneath its golden rays, remember this: the sun does not sleep. It burns in silence for you. It dies in brilliance for you. It gives without asking. And long after it's gone, its story will live on, in trees, in oceans, in you. Before alarms ever rang or clocks began to tick, the world itself kept time. Long before the first human blinked at the rising sun, a silent rhythm pulsed through all living things, a cadence carved not into metal gears but into molecules, etched into the quiet machinery of life. This is the story of the circadian rhythm, the 24-hour cycle that whispers when to wake, when to rest, when to heal, when to grow. It is not guided by thought or memory but by an ancient dance between light and darkness. Within your brain, nestled deep in a cluster of neurons called the suprachiasmatic nucleus, your body keeps its own time, syncing each cell to the sky. Morning light enters through your eyes not just to help you see but to tell your inner clock, begin again. Hormones surge on cue. Cortisol rises with the dawn, sharpening your mind. Body temperature climbs. Heart rate picks up. Energy blooms. Later, as daylight fades, another wave rolls in. Melatonin trickles through your bloodstream, lulling you towards stillness. Digestion slows, muscles loosen, thoughts soften. Sleep becomes inevitable, not just a habit but a cosmic contract. Even the smallest creatures obey. My stir at twilight. Flowers open with the sun. Fungi, fish, and fruit flies all entrain to this cycle as though all life breathes in the same breath. When you disrupt it through artificial light, night shifts, blue screens glowing into midnight, you don't just lose sleep. You defy an ancient intelligence. Your mood stumbles, memory dulls, hormones misfire, even your cells grow confused. For in every heartbeat, in every blink, in every breath, the rhythm still tries to hold you, to keep you in time, to bring you back to the sun. Across the globe, from the dense canopy of the Amazon to the sterile corridors of a city hospital, life pulses with rhythm, not in chaos but in chorus. Plants know when to fold their leaves. Bees know when to fly. Your liver knows when to detoxify, and your gut knows when to absorb. All of this unfolds beneath your awareness, orchestrated by genes that flicker on and off like lanterns in the dark. These are clock genes embedded in your DNA, regulating cycles of metabolism, immunity, even DNA repair. They turn your body into a timekeeping cathedral where each organ has its hour. Your pancreas releases insulin at breakfast but not at midnight. Your lungs breathe easier in the afternoon than at dawn. Blood pressure peaks in the morning and declines like a tide toward sleep. Disrupt this system, and the cracks appear. Jet lag is not just fatigue, it's a war between your biology and geography. Night shifts are not just jobs, they are chemical dissonance. Insulin resistance increases, cancer risk rises, memory fragments, depression deepens, your cells revolt. Yet this knowledge is not a curse, it is a compass. When you eat at consistent times, when you allow light to touch your skin each morning, when you rest in the silence of night, you are not simply living, you are sinking. You are tuning your life to a cosmic timepiece etched by evolution and refined by stars. Even in darkness, your body searches for rhythm. Even in silence, your cells listen for the music of light. The invisible clock is always ticking, and every time you honor it, you whisper back, "I am part of the rhythm. I remember the song." Long before alarm clocks and calendars, before the concept of hours or schedules, the earth was already spinning beneath a sun that never forgot to rise. And every living creature learned to bow to this spin. In the waters, plankton rise and fall in a daily migration as vast as any on land. In the deserts, reptiles bask by morning and hide by dusk. In your very cells, proteins assemble and dissolve on a timetable not set by your to-do list, but by the soft pulse of dawn and the steady sigh of night. Melatonin, the hormone of sleep, begins its whispering hours before your head touches the pillow. Cortisol, the hormone of energy, starts to build even before your eyes open. These waves are not optional, they are ancient contracts. But in the modern world, we breach them constantly. Blue light from screens delays melatonin. Caffeine tricks the adrenal clock. Midnight snacks jolt a liver trying to rest. And still the body tries to adjust, forgiving us again and again, resetting where it can. But it comes at a cost: chronic inflammation, fragmented memory, hormonal confusion. And yet the miracle is this: your clock is not broken, it is misaligned. It can be reset. A walk in the morning sun can anchor your rhythm. Avoiding bright light after dusk can restore melatonin's lullaby. Eating in a 10-12 hour window each day can retrain your metabolism to trust again. The body does not seek perfection, it seeks rhythm. And rhythm is not rigidity, it is return. Return to breath, return to light, return to the invisible tide of biology you carry with you always. For in this ancient orchestra, you are not just an observer, you are a note, a beat, a participant in the most silent symphony ever composed by life. Before there were planets, before oceans curled over rock and wind whispered through valleys, there was a darkness, a void so complete that even silence had no shape. And then, deep within the emptiness, a cloud of gas began to collapse under its own gravity. At first, it was nothing more than hydrogen drifting through the cosmos, a gathering of atoms unaware of their destiny. But as they pressed tighter and tighter, something remarkable ignited at the center: fusion. A star was born, not with a scream, but with a warmth so intense that space itself began to glow. That star, our sun, has been burning for 4.6 billion years without pause. It does not sleep, it does not waver. Every second, over 600 million tons of hydrogen are fused into helium, releasing energy that travels outward for tens of thousands of years before it even reaches the surface. And when that energy finally escapes, it races across 93 million miles in just over 8 minutes to kiss your skin, to warm your breakfast, to feed the leaves that feed you. Yet how little we pause to consider that the light touching your face is ancient, older than your country, older than your language, older than the mountains themselves. Inside the sun, the pressure is so immense that atoms shed their identities and become plasma, a state of matter that exists in nearly all the stars in the sky but is barely understood on Earth. This fusion is what powers galaxies, yet its math is delicate, almost poetic. The balance between gravity and radiation, between compression and explosion, is so fine that a whisper more mass would have turned our sun into a monster, a whisper less, and it would never have lit. This balance, this cosmic grace, is what allowed every tree, river, heartbeat, and thought to exist. The star does not burn like fire. Fire consumes. The sun fuses. It builds from within, joining atoms, releasing light not in anger but in the quiet rhythm of creation. And though it appears eternal, it too is aging. One day, even it will exhaust its fuel. But today, it shines. Not just as a ball of gas, but as a miracle of math, pressure, and time. A nuclear cradle, rocking the life of an entire planet without ever asking for thanks. The next time you squint at the sky, remember, you're not just looking at a light. You're looking at the very engine of being, the furnace that made you possible, not from afar, but from within. Even in the depths of the earth, where the light of the sun has never kissed the stone, something ancient begins to stir. Deep within the crust, where the roots of mountains are born and tectonic plates whisper their slow symphonies, the heart of the planet pulses. Magma, molten rock, seethes and shifts, a river of fire bound in silence and pressure. It is the Earth's blood, carrying the memory of creation, waiting for its chance to rise, to speak. And sometimes, when all the forces align, when cracks form in the crust, when gases build, when the lid of the world can hold no more, magma rises. First slowly, curling through chambers like smoke through the walls of a hidden temple. Then faster, fueled by momentum and heat, pushing upward, breaking boundaries. When it reaches the surface, it is no longer silent. It erupts violently, beautifully, spilling light and heat into the sky, reminding the world that even the oldest things are not dead. They are simply waiting. The birth of a volcano is not sudden. It is centuries in the making. Long before the first eruption, the crust begins to weaken. Tension builds as magma collects in chambers deep below. It expands with each breath of the earth, gathering force like a sleeping giant drawing its strength. Seismic whispers begin to echo, small tremors, minor quakes, barely noticed but deeply meaningful. The mountain swells. The pressure mounts. Rocks crack and melt. Gases escape through vents, leaving behind the scent of sulfur and the heat of potential. Then, at last, the earth yields. The first eruption is often the most violent, like the cry of a newborn. Lava explodes into the sky, ash darkens the heavens, and the ground trembles underfoot. It is destruction and creation in a single breath. What once was hidden becomes known. What once was solid becomes fluid. The earth shows its fire. After the eruption, silence returns, but it is not the silence of stillness. It is the silence of transformation. Lava cools and hardens, turning rivers of flame into black rock. Ash settles, covering the land like a dark snow, burying the old, nourishing the new. Volcanic soil is rich, teeming with minerals that plants crave. In time, forests will grow here. Life will return. But deep below, the process begins again. The magma does not rest. It continues to move, to gather, to wait. Every volcano is a cycle, a rhythm, a beating heart of the earth. And each eruption tells a story, not just of fire and rock, but of time itself. Because volcanoes are storytellers. They remember the heat of the planet's birth. They record the shifting of continents, the rise and fall of oceans, the breath of wind and rain across eons. They are the voice of Earth's memory. Beneath Yellowstone, beneath the Pacific Ring of Fire, beneath the hidden volcanoes of the ocean floor, magma churns. Supervolcanoes slumber with terrifying potential, their eruptions capable of changing climates, shifting civilizations, rewriting history. And yet, despite their power, volcanoes are not evil. They are not angry. They are simply necessary. Without them, the earth would not renew itself. Continents would not shift. Atmospheres would not evolve. Life itself may never have found its way. For it is in the crucible of fire that the ingredients of life are formed. The gases released during eruptions, Carbon dioxide, water vapor, sulfur dioxide help shape the skis. The heat that rises fuels currents, winds, and storms. Even the destruction they bring clears the way for rebirth. In this way, volcanoes are not just geological events, they are part of the story of life. Somewhere beneath the surface of a quiet hill, magma moves now. It is slow, patient, unhurried. It touches stone and melts it. It follows fractures like veins. It gathers in pools and chambers. It waits for the signal. And above, on the surface, life goes on. People build homes. Children play. Winds blow through forests born from ancient eruptions. They do not feel the pressure building beneath them, but the earth feels, it remembers, and one day it will rise again. Not in anger, but in expression, in release, in the language it has always spoken: fire, rock, and renewal. Beneath the forests and oceans, under the pressure of mountains and the quiet weight of valleys, the earth's crust carries its own language, a slow, persistent whisper shaped by tension, heat, and time. Though we walk upon it daily, trusting its firmness, the crust is not a perfect shell. It is fractured, fragile, and in constant negotiation with the forces beneath. These imperfections, called faults, are like hidden scars in stone, invisible yet powerful. Where the plates meet or slide past each other, stress accumulates silently, like water behind a dam, until one day the dam bursts. And so, in a moment shorter than a breath, the earth shudders. The ground moves, sometimes gently, sometimes with fury. This is the quake, the raw exhale of tension stored in silence for decades, centuries, even millennia. In cities built upon these fault lines, the trembling crust reveals the illusion of permanence. Concrete ripples, bridges sway, glass sings before shattering. Yet it is not chaos, it is choreography. The earth is simply adjusting its stance. Earthquakes do not arrive to punish, but to remind. They are reminders that the earth is alive, not fixed. We have mistaken stillness for peace, but peace does not always mean silence. In places like San Andreas, the boundary between two plates is also the boundary between expectation and disruption. There, engineers study the language of tremors, recording every shift and sigh of the crust, hopping to catch a warning before the next break. But prediction remains elusive. The earth speaks, but never on our schedule. It holds memory in its pressure and confession in its release. And in the aftermath, after the sirens fade and dust settles, the earth is reconfigured, slightly altered, as are we. Buildings are rebuilt, but the hearts of those who have felt the world sway beneath them are reshaped forever. There's humility in that kind of experience, a recognition that the ground is not something we control, but something we must listen to. Our ancestors understood this well, often treating the trembling of the earth as a sacred sign, sometimes fearsome, sometimes divine. Today, with instruments and seismic graphs, we've tried to replace that reverence with data. Yet deep down, when the walls move and the ground opens, the ancient awe returns. We realize we are not above the earth but upon it, not masters but passengers. In our efforts to understand earthquakes, we've also come to reflect on our choices. Urban planners now map the silent scars, choosing where to build and where to leave untouched. Architects design buildings that bend rather than break, mirroring the resilience of grass and wind. This is our adaptation, science guided by humility. Even still, not all can be saved. Sometimes the quakes come with no warning, and the stories of lives lost become the newest layer of memory in the Earth's archive. It's in those moments that we turn inward, asking not just how the Earth moves, but why we forget that it does. And perhaps that's the deeper lesson. The crust may be wounded and restless, but so are we. What matters is not just the shaking, but what we choose to rebuild when the stillness returns. In the furnace of time, deep beneath our feet, a quiet violence brews. Not of war or storm, but of slow-bubbling magma, silken rivers of molten memory pressing upward with the patience of centuries. These subterranean flows, ancient and restless, cradle the earth's core whisperings in a language older than bones, older than the first seas. Silica, iron, magnesium, molecules rearranged by heat into a liquid dance of pressure and promise. This isn't chaos. This is choreography. As magma rises, it thins, it cools, it seeks release. Sometimes it pauses in chambers that pulse like molten hearts. Sometimes it hurls itself through vents and fissures with an exhalation that tears the sky. But mostly it waits. The earth above seems calm, forests sway, cities hum, lovers sleep. But below, these fire rivers simmer, shaping the crust in secret. From basalt to andesite, every volcanic rock is a cooled signature of Earth's breath. These rocks are not just matter, they are memories. They hold clues to continents torn apart, to ancient air trapped in bubbles, to cataclysms and rebirths etched layer by glowing layer. And yet, we often think of volcanoes only when they roar, when ash clouds chase airplanes and lava reclaims the land. We forget the lullaby of heat beneath our every step, the gentle pull of magma forming new crust at the seafloor, the quiet gift of nutrients that erupting mountains shower upon the soil. Without this underground alchemy, there would be no fertile valleys, no islands rising from the sea, no diamonds formed in pressure's embrace. The earth in all its stillness is never still. Its inner fire breathes, reshapes, remembers. And maybe, just maybe, that fire lives in us too. In our tempers and passions, in the molten core of our dreams, in the tectonic shifts of love and grief that crack us open and let something new erupt through. There are volcanoes that never roar, never spill lava down village slopes, never darken the skies with ash, but they live, they pulse. They are called dormant, as if sleeping though sleep is too soft a word. These are the silent watchers, mountains with buried anger, with magma chambers simmering just out of reach. Their slopes wear snow in winter and wildflowers in spring. Children play on their meadows. Towns grow around them, forgetting the fire curled beneath. Yet deep inside, heat is stirring rock. Volatiles like water vapor and carbon dioxide dissolve into the magma, changing its texture, thickening it, priming it for pressure. A volcano is not a sudden event, it is a series of whispers. The earth begins to swell. Tiny earthquakes shiver beneath the soil. Sulfur seeps into the air. Instruments on satellites blink with warning, but often, to the naked eye, nothing changes. Until it does. Then the earth breaks its long-held breath. Pressure surpasses resistance. The magma, once fluid and glowing, meets the cold air and flashes into stone. In seconds, mountains are reshaped. Valleys disappear. Time, stretched across centuries of silence, folds into a single moment of eruption. It is devastating, it is beautiful, and it is necessary, because out of this destruction comes rebirth. The ash may smother, but it also fertilizes. It feeds forests yet unborn. It carves new lakes where old hills stood. Nature does not mourn as we do. It recycles, reclaims, reimagines. Our ancestors must have watched these events in awe, calling them the anger of gods, the wrath of spirits. But today we know more. We see the science, the buildup of gases, the architecture of magma pathways. And yet the awe remains. Because no matter how much we understand, standing before a volcano, erupting or still, is like facing the heart of the planet itself. It reminds us how alive the earth is, how thin the crust we walk on. How fragile, yet how endlessly remade. And yet, even as the volcano sleeps again, the earth is never truly quiet. Beneath our feet, a slow ballet of heat and stone continues. Tectonic plates drift like ancient rafts, scraping, colliding, folding into each other with the patience of millennia. This movement is imperceptible day by day, but it reshapes the entire face of the world. Continents are not static, they are voyagers. The Himalayas are rising even now, pushed upward by the meeting of India and Asia, just as the Andes were born from fire and compression in the west. These mountains were once flat seabeds, holding corals and shells. Now they pierce the skies. This rising and folding is no accident. It is the result of heat. Deep below in the Earth's mantle, convection currents swirl like water in a pot just beginning to boil. Heat from the core rises slowly, dragging solid rock with it. When it reaches the crust, it spreads outwards like breath against cold glass, and the crust responds by cracking, sometimes gently, sometimes catastrophically. Earthquakes mark these boundaries, not as signs of punishment but as language, the earth speaking in jolts and shifts. To those who listen, they reveal stories of tension, of forces in balance and imbalance, of energy waiting for release. And when that energy finds a path, it rushes upward, breaking rock, lifting seabeds into summits. We measure this energy in magnitudes. We build structures to withstand it, but still it humbles us. In cities lit by neon and fed by satellites, we forget how much we owe to the quiet violence beneath. The land we walk on, the hills we gaze upon, the caves that whisper in the dark, all are shaped by unseen heat. Even the minerals in our blood, iron, calcium, magnesium, once belonged to the deep earth, drawn upward by processes older than humanity. The volcano may rest. The mountain may stand still, but below, the molten engine of the planet never ceases. It is the silent architect, the unseen sculptor, and in its rhythms we find the pulse of a living world. Sometimes that molten breath escapes not through violent eruptions, but through gentle warmth. There are places on Earth where the ground steams quietly, where hot springs bubble like ancient secrets surfacing from the deep. Iceland, New Zealand, Yellowstone. These are windows into the underground where the Earth's core exhales through water and vapor. In these geothermal pools, minerals dissolve into hues of turquoise, amber, and rust. The water is scalding, yet soothing. It smells of sulfur, of time, of stone reborn. Here, life thrives in unexpected forms, microbes that feed on heat and chemicals, ancestors of all living things. Some of these creatures may be kin to those that began life itself, when Earth was still raw and newly formed. Scientists study these pools not just to understand this world, but to imagine others, planets far from ours, where life too may rise from fire. This geothermal heat has other gifts. It warms homes, powers turbines, and reminds us that energy doesn't always roar. Sometimes it whispers. The Earth, after all, is generous. Its fires do not only destroy, they nurture, shape, and sustain. Volcanoes enrich soil, ash feeds forests, heat brings light in the darkest lands, and though the crust above may cool and harden, the warmth below never stops giving. In ancient cultures, these hot springs were sacred, portals to the underworld, places of healing and communion with spirits. Today, we dip our feet into the same warmth, unaware that we are partaking in a ritual as old as continents. The water that laps against skin has journeyed through bedrock, has danced with magma, has risen slowly like breath returning from a deep dream. And as the steam rises into the cool night air, curling into the stars, it tells a story we often forget, that we live on a breathing planet. A planet where stone moves, where heat speaks, where silence hums with power. We are not above the earth. We are within it, part of it, warmed by its hidden heart. And if we pause, if we truly listen, we might hear the soft sound of stone sighing, of warmth unfolding, of the earth dreaming its long, patient dream beneath us. But not all warmth hides in stillness. Sometimes it flows. Beneath the oceans, in the darkest trenches where sunlight cannot reach, there are cracks, long, silent fissures in the seafloor. From these cracks, black chimneys rise, exhaling boiling water into the freezing depths. These are hydrothermal vents where the earth bleeds heat into the abyss. Here in eternal night, life defies every rule we thought we knew. There is no sunlight, no plants, and yet ecosystems thrive. Giant tube worms with blood-red plumes anchor themselves to the stone. Ghostly crabs scuttle over sulfur-coated rocks. Strange fish flash their own light. These creatures do not feed on sunlight. They feed on chemistry, on heat, on metal, on minerals carried upward from the molten core. It is a world powered not by the sky, but by the deep. And in this alien darkness, life writes its own poetry. Scientists peer into these vents and see not just curiosity, but possibility. If life can thrive here in boiling poison and pitch black, then might it thrive beneath the ice of Europa, beneath the clouds of Venus? We are reminded that life is not fragile, it is fierce. It finds cracks, it climbs through pressure, it drinks stone and breathes fire. These deep-sea vents are living time machines, whispering of Earth's earliest days, before forest, before birdsong, before air itself was safe to breathe. Perhaps this is where it all began, in heat, in darkness, in chemical alchemy. And now these vents still burn, still breathe, their warmth coiling like smoke through the ocean's coldest halls. Above them the whales pass silently. Schools of fish flicker and vanish. But below, the earth is exhaling and life listens. You too are listening now, wrapped in quiet thought, floating through the layers of this story. Let the warmth of the deep sea lull you, not into fear, but into wonder. For even in the coldest places, warmth finds a way to rise. Even in the loneliest dark, life hums its song. And that song echoes now through rock, through water, through you. Above those volcanic vents in the slow-drifting realm of mid-ocean waters, where pressure softens and light begins its shy return, life takes on shapes both delicate and strange. Here, the jellyfish reign like translucent monarchs, pulsing gently through the water with no hurry, no need for speed. Their bells glow softly, lit from within like old lanterns lost in time. Each pulse propels them forward in slow, dreamlike arcs, as if they are dancing not to a rhythm of hunger or fear, but to memory. Memory of something older than thought, perhaps. Their tendrils trail behind them like threads of a forgotten language. Some of them flash with bioluminescence, brief sparks in the dark, as if writing messages no one will read but the sea itself. In this twilight zone, evolution whispers rather than shouts. Fish take on glassy forms. Some bear lights beneath their eyes like stars. Others have bodies so thin they vanish if you look too long. They hover, they wait, they drift with patience. It is a world without borders, without roads, without destinations. Just currents, just pause, just being. The silence here is soft, not empty. It's filled with the hum of slow life, the quiet pulse of creatures who have never rushed. You can almost hear it, the heartbeat of the ocean, steady, ancient, alive. You begin to wonder, is this what peace looks like, not on land with its bustle and noise, but in the gentle weightlessness of the open sea? Your breath slows. The body sinks into rest. And in this vast stillness, you are reminded that not all motion must be loud. Not all life must shine to be seen. In the drifting of a jellyfish, in the patient float of a translucent fish, in the shimmer of light that needs no sun, you find a quiet you had forgotten to seek. And in this quiet you rest, not just your body, but your thoughts, your memories, your fears. Everything floats here, everything slows, and you are carried like them by nothing but the current. Even deeper now, the ocean becomes more than just water. It becomes memory itself. Here, in this abyss where sunlight has never touched, the pressure is immense, yet life endures. The creatures who call this home are not broken by the weight, they are shaped by it. Some have grown wide, unblinking eyes to catch the smallest flicker of bioluminescent light. Others have lost their eyes completely, navigating by vibrations and instinct, feeling their way through the dark like old souls who no longer need sight to believe. The gulper eel, with its ghostly body and enormous jaw, drifts with a hunger it barely understands. The vampire squid, elegant and shy, glides like a forgotten myth, trailing arms lined with soft, sensory hairs. They do not fight the dark, they wear it like a second skin. Around them, particles fall like snow, marine snow, it's called, fragments of life from above, drifting slowly down through the column of water, feeding those below with the quiet generosity of decay. Nothing is wasted here. Nothing is rushed. The rhythm is one of patience so deep it almost feels eternal. These creatures do not live for speed or daylight. They live for survival, for stillness, for the long game of existence. And as you imagine this world, this place beyond light, beyond time, you begin to understand something profound. That the universe does not demand brilliance from all its children. Some are meant to glow brightly, yes, but others, like these, are meant to endure in shadows, to thrive in silence, to keep watch in places no eye ever sees. In this sacred blackness you find a kinship. You too are allowed to rest. You too can find strength in stillness. You do not need to shine to be alive. You only need to breathe, to be, to float. And in this deep and endless dark, you are finally free to drift without direction, without fear, held by nothing, and yet held by everything. But even in these unreachable depths, where light is only a legend, there are whispers of the heavens. Hydrogen and oxygen, the builders of water, were forged in ancient stars that died before our Earth ever lived. These atoms, born in the fire of a collapsing sun, now reside in the cold stillness of the trench. It is a sacred paradox, that what was once radiant has now become silent. What once burned now floats, invisible in the ink of the deep. There is worship in that transformation. The Quran reminds us that He merges the night into the day and merges the day into the night, and He has subjected the sun and the moon, each running for an appointed term. Surah Az-Zumar 39:5. And yet beneath even this cycle, there is a realm where neither day nor night reach, only the pulse of unseen gravity, only the hush of waiting. Here, time slows to the rhythm of tectonic drift. Whole mountain ranges are born and die in silence. The seabed quivers with molten breath. And through it all, water remembers. It carries the memory of light, of creation, of command. Every molecule, every wave is a witness to God's decree. Be, and it is. In the language of this abyss there are no syllables, no prophets walk here, no temples stand. And yet it is not godless. It is heavy with presence, heavy with submission. The anglerfish that glows in solitude, the brittle star that clings to rock, each is Muslim in its surrender, not by speech but by being. They follow the path written into their bones. And you, dear listener, floating now on the edges of sleep, you too are part of that story. You are water from the stars, breath from the deep, and light hidden in flesh. You are never truly alone. Even in darkness you are seen. Even in silence you are heard. Even in your deepest uncertainty there is a divine design holding you. Let go, drift, be carried, and know that nothing in all creation is forgotten. High above the trench, where pressure relents and sunlight begins to dream again, another miracle stirs, one not bound by sight but by rhythm. Deep currents born thousands of miles away slip silently into these realms, carrying warmth from the equator like a whispered prayer across oceans. These currents know no borders. They recognize no flags. They are ancient and obedient, delivering balance as they were commanded. And though they have no mouths to speak, they testify. The Quran declares, "And of his signs is the creation of the heavens and the earth, and the diversity of your languages and your colors." Surah Ar-Rum 30:22. Just as languages differ, so do currents, some cold, some warm, some fast, some slow, yet all return to the source. In this quiet ballet, even molecules perform zikr. Their journey is not random. It is inscribed in divine architecture. Beneath the waves, water listens, to gravity, to magnetism, to the pulse of the moon. Each drop submits in silence to a choreography written before time began. And yet in all this silence the Creator speaks. The Bible tells us, "The voice of the Lord is over the waters, the God of glory thunders, the Lord over many waters." Psalm 29:3. Both revelations echo, beneath the surface there is sound, divine sound, but not the kind that vibrates the ear. It is a knowing, a weight, a reverence so deep it cannot rise. Just as stars obey their orbits and trees grow toward the sky, the ocean, too, remains faithful to its limits. And he has set a barrier between the two seas that they do not transgress. Surah Ar-Rahman 55:19-20. Imagine that. Even the sea knows where to stop. Even water, mighty and wild, obeys. And so should we. For in the currents and silence, in the chemistry and light, in the unseen and unspoken, there is worship, there is remembrance. And there is a gentle call rocking you now, urging your soul to rest. You are not a mistake. You are part of the balance. Let your worries dissolve. Let your breath match the tide. Let the sea of God's mercy hold you, effortlessly, endlessly, eternally. Not far from these obedient currents, hidden within the folds of the seabed, lies another marvel, methane ice, glowing faintly in the cold grip of the abyss. It is not fire, yet it burns. It is not solid, yet it shimmers like crystal dreams. This frozen flame forms when methane, gas of decay and life alike, fuses with water under immense pressure. In the darkness, without witness, these hydrates hold energy older than cities, older than even memory. Here lies a riddle of creation. A secret stored for when the world may need it. Some scientists fear it. Some dream of harvesting it, but none can claim they made it. The Quran says, "Do they not see how we drive the water to the barren land and bring forth thereby crops from which their cattle eat and they themselves? Will they not then see?" Surah As-Sajda 32:27. Even in death and burial beneath the sea, Allah stores potential. From decay comes fuel. From silence comes provision. The Bible, too, echoes this transformation. Unless a grain of wheat falls into the earth and dies, it remains alone, but if it dies, it bears much fruit. John 12:24. Decay, it seems, is not the end, it is a passage, a tunnel into purpose. So what of your own seasons of silence? What of the years where you felt buried, unseen, compressed by the weight of life? Perhaps, like methane ice, you were being preserved, held, hidden, for a purpose not yet revealed. Oceanic stillness, God does not forget. The deep may seem endless, but it is mapped by divine decree. And with him are the keys of the unseen, none knows them except him. Surah Al-An'am 6:59. So sleep now. Let your own buried hopes rest gently beneath the pressure of today. They are not lost. They are crystallizing, becoming energy, becoming light. And one day in his perfect time, they too will rise, like breath from the seabed, like prayer from the heart, like light from the deep. In a place where no sunlight dances, where pressure would crush a mountain's spine, life still stirs. Tiny beings, archaea and extremophiles, feast on minerals, not light. They breathe hydrogen, dine on sulfur, and bloom like silent prophets in a world without stars. No eyes watch them. No breeze touches them, yet they live. Not only live, but thrive. Scientists call this ecosystem chemosynthetic, a term cold and technical, but what it means is awe, life without sunlight. Life from stone. Life as if whispered into being in defiance of everything we thought we knew. The Quran tells us, and among his signs is the creation of the heavens and the earth, and whatever living creatures he has dispersed throughout them. And he, for gathering them when he wills, is competent. Surah Ash-Shura 42:29. Even here, in the most alien corners of earth, God has dispersed life. Not by chance, not by accident, but by command. The Bible too speaks of such mystery. The Spirit of God has made me, and the breath of the Almighty gives me life. Job 33:4. It does not say sunlight gives me life or climate sustains me. No, it is breath, divine intention, sacred decree. And so it is with you. Maybe you are in a place without warmth right now, a season where no light seems to reach, where joy feels fossilized and hope extinct. But perhaps your soul, like these deep-sea creatures, is being taught a different way to live. Not on surface joys, not on fleeting moments, but on minerals of trust, breath of faith, and the unseen currents of mercy. You are not forgotten, you are not out of reach. For the same God who sustains fireless creatures beneath continents can sustain you in your midnight valley. Sleep then as one held in divine intention. Rest, knowing that life flows in places even science cannot map. You are deeper than despair. You are older than sorrow, and you are cradled in a world still blooming in the dark. There is a moment buried deep within the sun where time folds into itself, where atoms crushed by gravity surrender their boundaries and become something new. Hydrogen becomes helium. Matter becomes energy. In that collision, silent, unseen light is born, not with sound or spectacle, but with a patience older than language. This is nuclear fusion, the quiet fire that fuels stars. The sun does not burn like firewood. It transforms. It gives without dying, emits without diminishing. Every ray that touches your face is a message from that ancient core, a whisper from millions of years ago. But the miracle is not just in the physics, it's in the pattern. For we too are called to transform, to take the crushing weight of trials and turn them somehow into light. In the Quran, Allah says, "Indeed, with hardship comes ease," Surah Ash-Shar 94:6. Not after, with. Fusion doesn't wait for pressure to stop, it happens through it. And in the Bible we read, "We rejoice in our sufferings, knowing that suffering produces endurance, and endurance produces character, and character produces hope." Romans 5:3-4. What is this but fusion? What is this but the alchemy of the soul under pressure? You were never meant to collapse. You were meant to transform, to glow, to become someone who radiates warmth without burning out. And perhaps that is why your journey has been heavy, because light is not born in shallow places. It comes from depth, from surrender, from letting go of who you were to become who you're destined to be. So as you sleep, let this truth settle into your bones. You are not being crushed, you are being refined. You are not in the dark, you are near the center where light begins. Rest now. Rest in the knowing that even the sun had to surrender to become a giver of life. You too are being prepared to shine, not with flames that consume, but with a warmth that endures, nourishes, and blesses everything it touches. But how does this unseen fire know where to begin? Deep in the sun's core, hydrogen atoms are not alone. They are countless, surrounded by billions just like them, pressured, compressed, held in place. And yet not all will fuse. Only those who reach the right moment, the right alignment, under the right tension, will spark the chain reaction that births light. It is not randomness, it is purpose wrapped in precision. Just as not every pain becomes growth until it meets surrender. Just as not every season of waiting produces fruit until it meets trust. In Islam, we're reminded in Surah Al-Hadid, No calamity befalls on the earth or in yourselves, but it is inscribed in the book before we bring it into existence. Verily, that is easy for Allah. 57:22. In this is not doom, but design. And in the Gospel of Matthew, Jesus says, "Are not two sparrows sold for a penny? Yet not one of them will fall to the ground outside your Father's care." Matthew 10:29. Nothing is wasted, not the delay, not the silence, not even the waiting that aches inside your chest. The fusion in the sun takes time, eons, and yet its results stretch across galaxies. So too your process may seem slow, hidden, unnoticed, but it is seeding light into places you cannot yet imagine. What looks like dormancy is actually preparation. What feels like silence is sacred alignment. Do not rush what is divine. Do not force what must unfold. As the sun trusts gravity to shape its center, you too can trust the hand that holds your soul. Lay your burdens down tonight, not in defeat but in quiet confidence. Something within you is nearing the threshold, a holy pressure building, a new light waiting to be born, and when it comes it will not be loud. It will be soft, steady, and unstoppable, just like the sun. And yet, despite the sun's ceaseless brilliance, there are places it cannot reach. Caverns buried beneath the earth, trenches at the bottom of oceans, and the secret places of the human heart where shadows dwell not because the sun failed, but because the soul is still learning how to open. Darkness does not always mean absence, it can mean readiness, a holy hush before awakening, a sacred pause before rebirth. Just as the moon does not shine with its own light but reflects the sun's radiance, so too can your soul begin to reflect light, even while waiting for its own flame to ignite. In the Quran, Allah says in Surah An-Nur, "Allah is the light of the heavens and the earth. The example of his light is like a niche within which is a lamp." 24:35. This lamp is already inside you, waiting to be lit. And in the Gospel of John it is written, "The light shines in the darkness, and the darkness has not overcome it." John 1:5. The battle is not between light and dark, it is between awareness and forgetfulness, between the truth you carry and the illusions that cloud it. So tonight as you rest, remember, even if you feel buried, you are not lost. Even if you feel hidden, you are not forgotten. The same God who watches over suns and galaxies has never taken his eyes off you. And just as fusion begins silently within the sun's heart, transformation begins quietly within yours. Not with noise, but with stillness. Not with effort, but with surrender. Let the light within you rise, not all at once, but one spark at a time. Each breath you take is a whisper of divine patience. Each heartbeat, a rhythm written by eternity. You are not waiting in the dark. You are being softened by it. Until the moment your own light will shine, not in imitation, but in divine reflection. Some say the sun is just a star, one among billions, nothing special, but to Earth it is everything. Without it there would be no warmth, no green, no breath. This is how proximity changes meaning. To a distant galaxy your life may seem small, but to the one who created you, your presence is purposeful, precise, and precious. The sun is not aware of the planets it warms, and yet it gives faithfully. So too, you may not realize how many lives your presence gently touches. A kind word, a patient silence, a silent prayer in the dark, these are your nuclear reactions, unseen but sacred. In Islamic tradition, the Prophet Muhammad (FDFA) said, "The best of people are those who are most beneficial to others." And in the Gospel of Matthew, Jesus teaches, "You are the light of the world, let your light shine before others." Matthew 5:14-16, not because you must be noticed, but because light by its very nature gives, even when unthanked. Even when unseen. Just like the fusion deep in the sun's heart, your inner goodness radiates far beyond what you realize. Let that thought settle into your soul tonight. You don't have to burn to prove you're bright. You don't have to speak to show you're wise. You don't have to rush to prove you're worthy. Your very existence, calm, quiet, constant, is a form of divine generosity. Every cell in your body carries the echo of stars. You are not an accident of dust and time. You are a crafted vessel carrying ancient light, a child of breath and intention. Rest now, not because your work is done, but because even stars pause behind clouds. Even prophets sought caves to retreat. Even light has its rhythm, a dance of appearing and retreating. Tonight, embrace your retreat, not as an escape but as a sacred pause before the next rising. Far beneath the golden skin of the sun lies a core of relentless stillness, a place so dense, so pressurized, that atoms are forced into unity. Hydrogen becomes helium, and in that act of union light is born, not from rage, not from chaos, but from togetherness. This is the secret of fusion, and perhaps this too is the secret of the soul, when hearts soften, when egos dissolve, when the lines between me and you blur in compassion, light is born. The Quran whispers this truth gently. And we made you peoples and tribes so that you may know one another. Surah Al-Hujurat 49:13. Not fight, not divide, but know. And Jesus in the Gospel of John lifts this same light when he prays that they may all be one. I in them and you in me, that they may become perfectly one. John 17:21-23. This unity, this divine fusion, is not weakness. It is the furnace of light. The sun does not fight its atoms, it gathers them. So too, your soul need not fight its wounds, its fears, its memories. Embrace them, fuse them. Let them become the pressure that births inner radiance. In the darkness of hardship, in the isolation of silence, something holy is always stirring. Just as deep within the sun's invisible heart, reactions unfold that will one day warm the skin of a child laughing in a field. What you hold inside, your kindness, your regrets, your quiet prayers, they too ripple outward, not instantly but inevitably. Fusion takes time, light takes time to reach the earth, and hope too takes time to arrive, but it does arrive, always. So tonight, release the urgency. Let the gravity of the divine hold you in place. Let your inner reactions unfold quietly, faithfully, like stars being born beneath your skin. You are not behind, you are not broken. You are in fusion, becoming, glowing, slowly, beautifully.